Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I guess I'll start out tonight. Thank you everybody for coming. I think it is a wonderful tool for the Gibson County Commissioners and the Gibson County Council to meet in joint session when we have such a large and important project facing our community. And I would encourage the new administrations to continue looking at some sort of joint sessions to keep everybody informed. It keeps the ball on the court and keeps it going, so to speak, and keeps the dialogue going. And communication is always a key for any relationship, whether it be a fiscal and a governing body. But if communication is there, then it seems like we can get differences set aside and come to some solutions. So I have asked Structure Point, Rick Connor, to be here tonight. I have met everybody on the line to answer any questions. Is Matt there? Okay. That the council or commissioners have. I wanted to keep the dialogue going with the Gibson County Jail project. Be that as it may, I'll turn it back over to Rick Connor. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Jim. Jim and Jeremy and I talked the other day on the phone and kind of came to the conclusion that maybe it would be helpful to display those options again, maybe on the screen. Also to give you a feel for, again, what's in the project, what's in each space in the building, kind of what are you buying. And then lastly, to go over that amendment that we went over at the end of the last meeting and talk about the architect's fee. So that's what I'm prepared to talk about. I thought maybe I'd go through that, and at the end, if it generates some discussion, then maybe we can talk. So let's go to the next slide there. So this slide there at the top shows the various build options that we've considered. There's nothing new here. These are all the same numbers that we went over last time that we met. They're just displayed a little bit better. So the top one, 41.8, that's the entire cost, everything included for the 288-bed jail, the sheriff, and the community corrections. That would be the full meal deal here for us. The next line down is virtually the same thing, but we only have 196 beds. Next line down at 34.4 million is the 196 bed jail plus sheriff's offices. And in this case, we would be deferring community corrections. Then the next line down at 31.1 is kind of, if you flipped it and you did the 196 bed jail and you deferred the sheriff's office and did community corrections. And in all of these situations, the facility would be designed so that these pieces could be easily added in the future, okay? And then the last one, that 29.2 million, is just the jail itself. So it's the area where prisoners are incarcerated, plus the support areas like booking and what have you. I said before, I mean, these are our estimates. They're probably a little bit high because of the market. That's why I put that note on there. But when we're at this planning level, it's better to be safe than sorry, because you only have certain funding opportunities. Below that then are the funding options that have been discussed. This is exactly what Matt Eckerly at Baker Tilly presented last time. Basically, the first one there that's listed, can you see these by any chance?
Should be.
Okay.
Matt, can you see everything on screen?
Yes.
Oh, good. So the first one is what he presented is what the correctional facilities tax itself generates, the tax that you've been collecting for a year now or so, would generate $24.665 million that would be able to be applied to the project, directly applied to those build options up above. He mentioned a little trick, which would be to put edit behind that as a backup income stream. The only time you'd ever need it is if for some reason that correctional facilities tax did not come in the way you thought it would. You wouldn't actually put edit money in it unless you got into that situation. He said that added about $5 million, so that got you to 29.665. And then the very last one was a scenario that he ran, which was the entire correctional facilities tax plus roughly $550,000 a year out of your edit fund for 20 years. And then someone brought up when we met last time that there's about $100,000 a year that could be available in 2025 as these courthouse funding burns off. So, you know, from our standpoint, our recommendation is to do the 288 bed jail. And that's what we recommend. I mean, you all seem to prefer more of the 196 bed 10-year solution because that's more affordable, and I get that, and we're right there with you doing what you want. My advice, however, is to go ahead and do what we're showing up here. There we go. Do this one right here. Design all of this with the sheriff's office and community corrections being, we have the full plans for those, but they're alternates. We're going to collect bids so that these things could be carved out and deferred. Because my guess is that you could afford this with this funding. Now, I know the numbers don't quite match up, but as I said, I think I'm a little high here, and I think there's probably some ways that we could even shrink the project just a little bit to get this funding to work for this option. So that's my recommendation to you at this point. We can come back to this slide and chew on it a little bit more if you want to. I think it's a whole lot easier to see it when it's right there on the screen like that. The next thing I wanted to do was to just kind of go over what it is we're buying. So that'd be the next slide. And right now we're looking at this Cooper site. Seems to be the best one. We had some problems with some of the other sites. It's at County Road 150 South and Old US 41. I think it'll work. It's 15.5 acres. It's a little bit of an oddball shape. When you see the plans, matter of fact, flip to the next slide. There's the layout that we did. You guys have seen this before. Go back now to the, this is actually the flip flop of that layout. I didn't, you can see that community corrections is kind of on the other side, but it's the same exact plan. The thing that I would be wanting to do on this site is to maximize the opportunity for expansion. I hate the fact that we can't expand the existing jail and then we have to take that asset and basically throw it in the dumpster. So when we design this one, we're going to make darn sure that we can expand it. And for how long? Heck, forever. I mean, there isn't a whole lot that goes out of style in the jail. So we need a lot of room in this direction. There's the 96 bed expansion, right? Or 92 bed expansion. So what I would want to do, my guys laid this out, what I would want to do is take, if we need that much pond, then we'll put some of it up here or something so that we have enough room to, you know, have a 200 bed expansion someday if we need to. It looks like we could do something up here for community corrections if we ever needed anything. We could make the offices longer if we needed to. So I don't know, for my money, maybe this is a little bit tight of a site, but I think we can make it work. It's got some floodway down here, so that's kind of unusable property. But I think the site can work. It's served by water, it's served by sewer. It's a little bit more expensive than what we were looking at before, but I think it's in the ballpark. What I would do here is get an option to purchase this property and then go into a more in-depth analysis. I would want to do a survey of this. I would want to lay out the building and the drainage, where it all has to go to make sure that we can get everything to fit the way we want to. I would do soil borings. We need the building laid out so that we can do the soil borings in the various corners of the building to make sure that structurally we're going to be okay. You know, we'll look at utilities, wetlands, and what have you. And the other thing I would do, this requires a rezoning, I would go ahead and go through the zoning process so that you've got all the cats out of the bag before you actually have to buy the property. But it looks like a pretty good site to me. So let's go to the next one. This is the building part, and there are 4 primary components here. There's the incarceration part up here at the top, the cell blocks. There is community corrections. You can see that down at the bottom. This part that's kind of a bluish is the administrative area that supports the jail. And then this part over here that's kind of got the pink dots or red dots, that's the sheriff's offices, okay? If you went with the $29 million just the jail option, you need to build this thing and you need to build this thing up here. And everything else would be added on in the future. So the incarceration part is divided into cell blocks. You can see them A, B, C, D, E, F, on around. Cell blocks A and B, those are, and they're all listed here. You can't hardly read them. There are 17 4-man cells in A and B. In C, there are 12 2-man cells. And you have to realize this is 2 stories, so there's kind of a loft area up above where you get the rest of the cells. In D and E and H and I, you have 32 1-man cells altogether. My recommendation would be to size those cells. The difference between the size of a 1-man cell and a 2-man cell, it's not insignificant, but it isn't all that much. I think for my money, I would make them sized for 2-man. I know the sheriff wants them for isolation purposes. He only wants to put 1 person in there, and maybe that's all you do. But if you get in a pinch someday and you need a couple of those cells to put 2 people in there, you could. And then F and G, F is here, is that G over there? I'm kind of having a hard time, or G's, there they are right there up at the top. Those are 2 36-man dorms. And we, the council, like dorms because they're cheaper than cells, because they don't have any cells in them, they're just bunks. So these are your more compliant prisoners. All depends upon the complexion of your population, and the sheriff knows that better than anybody, as to how many dorm beds we should have in a jail this size. So total in this whole thing is 196 beds. If you put the other expansion on, that's how you get to 288. Then the next area is the jail administrative area itself, which is right in here. Kind of what I need the pointer for. Here's the main entrance right here, okay? It's a dual entrance for the sheriff's office kind of on this side and the jail on that side. Over in this area on the jail side is video visitation and in-person visitation. The next area over here are staff offices and the magistrate. The next area over here includes booking. and the holding cells, and then also video arraignment right here. In the side right here on the end is a sally port where you drop off prisoners, right? This area here in the corner is staff lockers, but mostly it's storage. All the stuff you have down in the basement right now. This is the kitchen. This next one is the laundry, and the next one is medical. Now, it's important to understand that this part right here is sized for 288 prisoners. We could shrink that whole thing down and just design it for 196, and we'd save a little bit of money. The problem is, if you ever had to expand this stuff, it isn't going to expand very easily. Some of it we could make expand easily, but most of it would not. And we'd be in a position kind of like the menagerie that we have downtown. So right now, at this very moment, it's sized for the full 288 bed deal. So it's a little bit bigger than these. We get to the sheriff's offices then. Again, here's the public entrance. Over on this side is some interview rooms, and fingerprinting, I think, is right here. Right next to it are staff offices, IT. Right here next to it is dispatch and 911. In the corner is patrol, and I think there's some showers up here, staff showers. The detective area is back here in the corner. There are interview rooms, and there are evidence storage. That eats up a lot of space, that evidence storage. And then here in this area is training and then more storage. So, and then the very last spot is community corrections. It's very similar to what you have now, except that it's about half the size. Because in all the projections we did, we could never come up with a projection of 120 for that. So I don't know why it was built that big to begin with, but it only needs to be about 60 to last 20 years. So this is what you'd be buying if we did this 10-year solution. The next thing I wanted to go over was the amendment. Well, you can't hardly see that either. This is the document that was passed out last time towards the end of the meeting. So our contract, with all the boilerplate that comes with it, was approved when you authorized our pre-design work back in June. So what you see here is an amendment to that contract. It's a page and a half. This is the first page, and this is the half a page to the right of it. The line right up in here shows the scope of what we're doing. And what it basically says is that we're designing a 196 bed jail with an option for community corrections and another option for the sheriff's office. It goes on further down in here to talk about what the construction cost of that is. Now, this is not the numbers that you saw on the first sheet. This is a smaller, reduced number. It's just the construction portion of what you saw on the first sheet. And the construction portion, if we build all of that stuff, is $33 million, 33.5 actually. And if we took community corrections and the sheriff's office off, it would shrink down to 26 million. Here we identify the schedule. So this is when are we going to start, which we had to plug a number in there. I think that says December 8th. And then the next one was when would construction likely start? And I think I've got September 1st there of next year. And then when would it be finished? When would substantial completion would be January of 23, which coincides with what the court order is. And I still think we can hit that. So the architectural and engineering services to design the entire facility and administer the project through the construction process is called basic services. That's what they call it in the industry. The full service architecture and engineering for basic services for a jail of this size and quality generally runs in the neighborhood of 7 to 10.5% of the construction cost. And I can provide reference material that supports this. Our design fee is listed down here, and it's broken down into phases as the work is completed, kind of like preliminary design and on towards final design, bidding, and all that kind of thing. And finally, services during construction while the thing's being built. The total fee that's listed there is a little over $2.5 million, which is right at about 7.5% of that $33.5 million construction cost. Now, specialty services are always in addition to basic services. These are things like kitchen design, laundry design, building code consulting, and security systems design. And that's the largest part of it, is designing the security protocol and systems for the entire jail. Those are listed over here. They amount to an additional 0.75%. Now, the county could contract for these things directly. Most owners prefer that the architect does this for them. For us, these fees are a straight pass-through. There's no markup or anything like that. So here on the very last line, it lists the total compensation to the architect, and that's a little over 2.7 million when you count the specialty services. I know this sounds like an enormous amount of money, but I want you to consider a few things. First, correctional projects are the most complex architectural projects there are. Second, this fee that I've given you here is an all-inclusive number. You will pay no more than that number. If there are risks out there that cause changes in this, that, and the next thing, that's our problem, not yours. One thing you could do is to talk to Jeff Hatfield, Vanderburgh County Commissioner. He had some lower fees in Vanderburgh that he was looking at from our competitors. But when he found that when he compared all the things that were left out compared to the things that we've got in there, there was really no difference. I'm sure you guys are besieged by people that are screaming loud that they can do this project for less than we can do it. It always amazes me what people will say from afar when they have no familiarity with the details of the project and they want to get themselves hired. We've been working with all of you and the sheriff and the sheriff's staff for 6 months now. I believe we understand the project, and I'm certain that we understand everybody's goals very well. And we're working really, really hard to try to help every stakeholder reach a conclusion that they can accept. Every jail project is different. There are no good rules of thumb. If they were, we'd be able to just take cookie cutter designs off the shelf and build them from those designs. There's no shelf and there are no cookie cutter designs. So some jail projects are additions, like Posey County and the one Dearborn County did. Those are additions to existing jails. Yours is a standalone greenfield one. Some have community corrections component to them, and some don't. Some have a larger sheriff's office, and some have a smaller one. Some jails are designed to just satisfy the 10-year goal. Other jails are designed to satisfy the 20-year goal. Some jails have mostly cells. Other jails have primarily dormitories, and that makes a big difference because those cells are really expensive. But the truth is, and you all should know this, the Indiana jail market is dominated by architects and construction managers who are closely aligned with jail equipment suppliers. Suppliers that provide everything from cells to security systems to toilets. The architects specify their products and as a result have less work to do. Less effort means lower architectural fees. But these closed specs that these architects come up with reduce competition in construction, they decrease quality, and they increase construction costs on bid day. What we do is we provide an open spec where every qualified supplier can bid. And that results in increased competition, and it produces lower construction bids. You get what you pay for. Our fee is a competitive full service fee for a project like this. And our team, including DLR, have designed thousands of jails across the country. And the benefit to you is this: you get a well thought out design that reduces the ongoing staffing costs. The operational costs just kill you in these facilities. And you get the specification of good quality products that reduce maintenance costs. And today you guys spend a ton of money every year on staffing and on maintenance. Spending a little more money on design gets you better construction prices. If you save just 5% on construction, that's $1.5 million. And over the life of the jail, the design fee is less than 0.5% of the overall cost of the building and the operation of it. Operational functionality is huge, and it takes time to design that in. So it comes down to this from a design fee standpoint: save 1% or 2% on design fee and pay 3 to 5% more in construction cost, or get a much better overall value by doing a quality design up front. So that's everything I know about the fees. It's everything I know about your facility in terms of the pieces that are in there, and it's everything I know about the money end of things. Maybe going back to that first slide is kind of the one that's their challenge. I apologize for not having this last time. That would have made things a lot easier.
So how much, you said that's all inclusive, how much does that assume for like site acquisition and production costs?
I think I had $200,000 in there for the site acquisition when I did the first 2 alternates. Then I think you guys asked me to kind of put the other 3 together, and I think I might have bumped it to $300,000 because I knew we were looking at that other, that Cooper property.
Cooper is how many acres?
15 and a half.
And the other one, what was it?
It was 20, wasn't it? The thing I liked about the other one's not even a consideration because it's got a damn line underneath it. But I liked it because it was long and skinny, and our jail layout is long and skinny because so you could expand forever and never have to tear anything out. The other thing that's not so good about the Cooper property is that it has quite a bit of floodplain there that is unusable. Or floodway, I think it said.
So that's 300 to buy it, get ready. Is that right? Or
What do you think?
You said that's 300 for Cooper.
Yeah, it's pretty close, yes.
okay.
But understanding I'm still working on appraisals, because before you can do anything, we have to have appraisals go with it. So we do not have an option on it.
And is demo of existing jail included?
It's not. I never did put that in there. I know you guys talked about it. You know, my guess is it might be 150 grand or something like that. One thing, you know, on a $30 million project, you know, 10% of that's roughly the contingency that I have in there. So there's quite a bit of money there to pay for some of these things that you brought up.
I have talked to Debbie about steering about an over grant for tearing down the jail.
Huh.
out there, or there are?
No guarantee, but we've been pretty lucky with that, just like recently 2 buildings in Pacoca, the granary at Hopstock. That same program.
There's one thing that I just bring up at the risk of getting thrown out of the room. So 196 bed jail, okay? The rules say, and we haven't been following the rules, and hardly any other county has either. The rules say that 20% of that has to be empty. That's for proper classification of inmates. So that takes us down to 156 is what we really get to use. If we're in front of the judge and we're talking to him, yes, 156 is what we get to use, okay? Your average occupancy on the average day last year was 128. That isn't a hell of a lot of margin. And your peak day was 169.
What's it been this year?
It's been down, but you're getting back up to 100, aren't you? He said, what's it been this year?
I can't tell you because of the virus and stuff, but our population today was like 180.
So,
That last
so-
chart you gave us was around that, 110 to 112, was it? For the year, pretty much?
So all I'm saying is I don't know if I'd be too quick to go tear down the existing jail. Because, maybe you remove an eyesore or something like that. I guess if you have a project, then that's a different story. Then that would make sense. And maybe the 150,000 is actually part of that project.
Based on what we've seen that it costs to maintain that jail, I mean, obviously we wouldn't have to heat and cool it to the extent that we do, but
I know.
tearing it down will pay for itself, I think, pretty quickly. In the form of, utilities that we wouldn't have, but that'd be double counting. I don't know how much more efficient this will be. I mean, I'm assuming dramatically.
Oh, yeah. From an energy standpoint, I mean, the codes make you design it energy efficient, so.
Mr. Clark, what do you think about that location? I know you've had some opinion about downtown. How do you feel about
I
southern
like
entrance?
that location. It's got 15-inch sewer and a 12-inch water line on property. So I've been part of the jail thing for like 2 years. And what I like about it, the lift stations across the street. I think instead of spending $700,000 to $1 million running water and sewer lines to some of the other properties, it's good value. That's my opinion. Because, I just don't hate to spend $1 million just on running water and sewer lines, before you start digging. So it's on property. There's a 15-inch sewer line, 12-inch water line.
That's the 7th site we've looked at, and it is the best. I mean,
And I hate it that there's just that one part that's floodplain. But
Where are we at on talks with the city of Princeton about getting that rezoned?
I haven't talked to anybody.
we haven't done anything.
Yeah.
I think that would be a monumental hurdle that we'd have to cross before we even spend a dime.
Oh yeah, you gotta get it zoned.
It's not zoned for this.
I haven't formally done anything, but I've informally made some inquiries.
We got any positive, negative, anything that we're doing?
Not yet.
If we can't get it zoned, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Like it.
Oh, it doesn't.
that's where I'm at, and if I can't get,
I'd like to put it in outer space, but that ain't gonna work either.
right, I think we gotta make sure we're gonna be, okay, as far as zoning, I think we have to also be sure, that it appraises, because we have a state board of council looking over our shoulders too. All these things have to be in place before we even, I can have an option signs.
Is the property across the street up there? Is it
To
also?
the left,
Yeah,
he doesn't want to sell. I talked to him,
is that? Is what?
because he was worried about him in the domain. I said, I don't think our people want to do him in domain. So I promised him that, I didn't see anybody wanting to do that.
On this drawing up here, what's the blue dotted line?
that runs into the corner of the jail, is that the floodplain?
Yeah, yeah, it's gotta be.
No,
Well, he sees a faint blue line going up and to the right, and right around there. I will tell you, I don't know,
I don't know.
but I don't think it's a problem.
My guess is it's either like a 500 flood mark or something like that.
Yeah.
It might be, and that's my personal opinion, I think the flood, I saw the state one, is this coming off the state floodplain?
Yeah, sure it is.
Okay.
That does it say floodplain or floodway?
Floodway.
Floodplain is where the water's stagnant. Floodplain is where it's moving.
Well, that's a floodway,
Floodway.
Yeah, floodways.
because I was really wanting to put the retention pond a little closer to the south, probably you're at,
Well, you can't.
not get into it too far, okay.
That's why we need a real-life survey. If we're really gonna consider this ground, I agree with you. I mean, we need some sort of a testing of the water to find out if it's zonable.
I think before we do that, you need to talk to the city, because I don't want to spend a dime on it until we know if it's gonna be zoned.
Oh, I agree.
I mean, I think that's the first step we have to do right now,
Yeah,
and that doesn't cost us a penny.
you gotta do that, jump through that hurdle, and then you turn out the samples and.
We're planning a wedding without a bride right now, so.
Well, some of the other sites we looked at were good sites, but you gotta know one vendor. There's a
There's
lot
own
of weight involved with concrete.
There's zones then.
And there's a few sites I like too, there's that one long narrow one, that when you got an old coal mine under it, you can't build on it.
Thanks, Rick.
And Rick, that front page and the last page, your fee and the other, is pre-design included in the front page and or the last, or is that, those fees are after what we've already,
The pre-design work we've done are not in any of these.
it's not in any of these numbers. Do you know where we are on that? I mean, I
think
know we
you're
had a
at-
bill earlier, but I'm assuming you've done more.
I think you're at about 170,000 right now. And I think we were authorized for 250 or something like that. And the only way that would go up is if we start jumping into site stuff.
And then the second page, the layout, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. That, what's the difference between a 4-bed dorm and a 4-bed cell? Did I miss that?
No, I believe it was a 4-bed cell. No, 17 4-man cells, that's block A and block B. Those are real life cells with a swinging door and a lock, okay? As opposed to the only dorms you have are F and G, and those are 2 36-man dorms. So there'd be 36 people wandering around in each one of those dorms. They all have a bed. It's upstairs and downstairs, and then they have that day room out there in front that they can wander around in. That, of course, is your least expensive housing option.
How many one bed?
You have 32 one-man cells that
I thought you said there was like 4 or 32 or something. I was going to.
I know.
There.
Altogether, there's 32 one-man cells.
Okay.
Did you mention that, didn't you say that there's also a place for the magistrate?
There is. I think there are actually 2 places, if I remember right.
That was kind of a problem we had about where we were going to put the magistrate. We don't have room at the courthouse.
Yeah.
So that is in.
Yeah, and, this whole thing is a concept, okay? It's a pretty educated concept. The reason we drew it, and a lot of architects at this stage of the game wouldn't do this, they wouldn't go to this much trouble. The reason we went to this much trouble is 2 reasons. One, you can get a better estimate of the construction cost because you have real life square footages. And 2, you can get a really good estimate of the staffing cost because you know how the thing's laid out, right? And that's everything in a jail. So when we move into design, first order of business is to critique the living shit out of this thing and say, wait a minute, what if we put some more dorms in? Or what if we make those one-man cells capable of having 2 people in them? Or what if we shrink the area where the magistrate is. And that's exactly what would go on. Matter of fact, I would be leading that effort to tweak it with the idea in the back of my mind to shrink it a little bit, because back to the first sheet, I want to get that 36.7 to fit in the 34.365 bucket. And I think we can do that. I think we could probably take 10% out of the space, you know, the sheriff's offices combined with the jail administration area. I think there's some shrinkage that can happen there. And so we'd save a little money that way. And then I still think I got an enormously high contingency that I haven't seen anything that's really sucking up much of that money. And then we're going into a good construction market. So we wouldn't get you in a box though, because we'll design the sheriff's office and the community corrections so that they could be deferred if the prices came in too high. But the last thing I'd want to do is design something without one of those components, have the prices come in low, and then have the sheriff shoot me because we could have done it.
On your estimated cost, it says 196 beds, but you're recommending that we bid the 288. So what would be?
Well, I'm recommending that because that's the 20-year solution.
And that,
But I'm hearing from you guys that that's no way, Jose. So I'm
well, at 41 million, no, it is not. And that's what I'm asking is, what would be the difference on your estimates on prices if that 41 million is, if we do design the 288 and with the 96 extra beds separate, what would your fees, would that change to that?
Yeah, our design fees would be a little bit bigger. And actually that was the original amendment that the commissioners have already approved.
Yeah, because
Got everybody's attention.
I agree with the 41 million, it's
Well,
out of our price range.
Here's how you do the 41 million. If you wanted to do it, and I'll tell you a little bit of a story. So, Vanderburg, they built a 512 bed jail, gosh, 15 years ago or something like that.
12.
And right before, right kind of, they were about at this stage, maybe a little bit further into it. And they started getting squeamish about the numbers. So they shrunk it to 512 beds. And then they did something incredibly silly. There's a cavity space around the perimeter of that jail where all the mechanical equipment is. That was supposed to be like 6 feet wide. They shrunk it down to like 3 or something. You can't even get in there to service the equipment. And that's what they have. It's there right now. That jail was overcrowded the day it opened. Because, you know, it does take a couple, 2 or 3 years to build it. So meanwhile, time marches on and Vanderburg's different than Gibson as far as their demand and everything. So is there any reason to lie awake at night and think you really ought to do a 288 bed jail because that solved our problems for 20 years? That's my recommendation. Now here's how you would do it. I think after listening to everybody, what I would do is I would do the 288 bed jail. I would have an option to shrink it to 196. I would have another option for the sheriff's department and another option for community corrections. So you're bidding four components. And I'd take that to the market and see how much that's really going to cost. Now, but you say that's close to $40 million. So what you have going for you, I think, is a few things. I think you could pay for that in that 34.365 bucket. if you housed 50 out-of-county prisoners, and I know, Jeremy, you gotta count how much extra staff you need and all that kind of thing. I think the net was $173,000 a year. And if you use that $100,000 of courthouse bonds, and if you only needed 5% of the 10% contingency, I think it would just about fit. And if you wanted myself and Matt Epperly to study that a little bit more, we could do that. But I kind of got the feeling that that was a non-starter. The thing that's a little bit screwy is that you're taking a 20-year bond to build something that's technically is only going to last 10 years.
And I don't want to base it on getting other prisoners, because everybody else is in the same situation we are now. They're being forced to build jails. So right now there's a lot of jails that are
Competitors.
that are crowded.
Yeah.
But in 5 years or whatever, if everybody could have their own new jail with enough room, and we won't have anybody. And then we're still going to be short on money. So you're betting on something that you don't know what's going to happen.
One piece of new data that I don't think it's private, I think I can tell you, is that, we were working in Vandenberg and they needed a 750 bed addition to avoid having to ship out prisoners and to make it work for 20 years. That was their big one. And that was $90 million. And they, 80 or 90. And they, of course, they hadn't even passed the tax. They're way behind you guys. So then COVID came along and that whole thing just kind of collapsed and it's in limbo. Well, the other day I got a call. They want us to design, and we're laying it out right now, a 160 bed addition that would have some of the specialty housing in there that they think they need, maybe for some of the bad guys. And then they made a decision, they're going to ship out the rest. They're going to be shipping out 100, 150 prisoners all the time. So for your point there, I mean, there'll be a little bit, that would be the biggest concern here, is that Vandenberg solves their problem, everybody else is going to have a problem. But it looks like they're not going to solve the problem. And what you guys could do the same thing. I mean, you could build a 196 bed jail and just say in the future, we're going to farm these guys out. That'll work. It's not free, but it would work.
Have you had anything since March that's went to bid that can document that 10% being too high?
I think I told you last time, we just had a courthouse project up in Michigan City that came in 20%, the low bid was 20% below what our estimate was. That's not a jail, but it's on a par, because those monumental buildings are pretty expensive.
Well, the reason I asked that is we went through a project for rural water, and we thought that it would come in significantly under the estimates because of the competitive bidding and all that. It didn't come in under the estimates hardly at all. The difference with that is we're talking about pipe, and for whatever reason, even though oil is cheap, pipe is extremely expensive. So I just don't know that we can sit here and say that it's going to come in because of the mechanical and all the copper, the wiring and all that. We just don't know. I don't think it's safe to assume that it's going to come in.
I don't think, I would never say, hey, it's going to, if I thought it was going to come in that low, I'd have made the damn estimates that low, okay? So I'm not saying that at all. And that's why I'm giving you a fallback position. That say, just for sake of discussion here, say you wanted to go with the full 288. I mean, in a heartbeat, we would not build those other 92 beds.
Right.
And we'd be down to 36.7, just like that. And if we had to, we'd bag community corrections, probably. The one bad thing about that is it doesn't generate as much money as the sheriff's office. It's about double. The sheriff's office is about twice what community corrections is in terms of cost. So I would always design in a fallback position for you so that you could never be harmed. But by the same token, I just hate to see you not totally solve your problem. You know, that's what I'm put on the planet, is to help you solve your problem.
What does it cost us to house an inmate per day, or like a rough figure even? Say again.
$37.50.
What they allow.
That's what they're allowed. It costs a lot more than that.
Yeah.
How much it costs?
How much do you have to pay to house somebody out? Right now, today, it's $37.50 a day.
Say again.
What it costs Gibson to house somebody at Posey is $37.50 a day, plus you have to transport them there and back.
Plus medical.
And you have,
Do we cover, who covers medical in that situation?
We do know, Tim.
We continue to cover
Right,
medical.
plus you pay for their legal
Legal.
staff to go to and from, they get paid mileage.
But we pay medical on level 6 that we're housing. Okay.
now the other question is, how much does it cost if you were to house someone and it costs more than that? I mean,
Significantly more.
yeah, it might be $45 or something.
45, 50.
Yeah,
We have to look at the.
We could figure it out.
Jail and the community correction.
Kind of want to get a rough ballpark figure.
We looked at that years ago at budget time, you know, whether it made sense to house extra prisoners and all that, and by the time you figure the staffing and meals and.
None of this.
It's break even, or,
I think if you don't own anything, you break even.
well, especially if you you build in the financing of the new jail that you built to house them, then it's not even close.
No.
You see what I mean? We're doing that with no assumptions of cost other than maintenance on the jail. It's not like that's been amortized into it, but yeah, I've looked at that one before. I don't have the exact number, but we can figure it out pretty quick. Part of that problem we have is with the EMS. Sometimes they'll come and say, well, we bring in more money than we spend, but the commissioner's budget, it's on a different budget, covers all of the benefits, the retirement, the insurance, pays the taxes. So there's so going into that requires help from the auditor's office to be able to get a handle on exactly how much that is.
And another question I want to ask is like, is there room in adjacent jails or in area jails? Should we ever need to send them out? I mean,
Well, if you
for
build
instance,
100,
Posey County Pool right now, or?
Back when all this started with the overcrowding and the lawsuit, we sent out requests from Posey, Warwick, and Pike counties to get contracts with them to hold them if we had to send them out because of the number we were allowed to keep. Posey County was going to charge us $40 a day, and Warwick and Pike County was $37.50. So we went for the contract with Posey, or Warwick and Pike County. We did not sign on with Posey. The most in Pike County that we could probably have available would be from 3 to 5 people. Warwick County, not much holding.
And no females.
Sure, that might be a problem.
Wasn't the sheriff no females?
I believe that.
I mean, you're gonna last for a while if you build 196 beds. You're gonna last for, well, I hope 10 years, right? So the question is, are there gonna be beds 10 years from now? I don't think anybody.
And I'm looking through that lawsuit some, but you guys may have helped me out on this. My understanding is it's strictly a population complaint. And then I was looking back and it's more than population. What were some of the other criteria that they highlighted or outlined that need to be addressed?
It was overcrowding
Okay.
and it was understaffed. Those were the two primary.
Okay, I did see something about that.
And right now, today, it is grossly understaffed. You know, I'm assuming
It's 88.
you have lightning to strike or.
There's 88 compliance too.
How many,
Say it again, 88,
88, there's
Okay.
88 issues.
need ramps or maybe
Yeah,
elevator work.
if you walk through the jail, you see there's like 23 different step levels,
Mhm.
so that becomes an issue.
Right now, we're 8 jailers short of what we currently have appropriated for. I've got 2, one gentleman's gonna start next Monday, and I've got another guy that just took his, final test yesterday, and maybe it'll start in a week or 2, just depending on when we get the test results back.
But 80 doesn't sound like a lot, it's 50% off. He's got 15 jailers, he needs 8 more. So it's a lot, they're short a lot.
And it's my understanding, Ricky, or someone else may have more information on this, but in talking with a gentleman who was involved in the jail a few years back, it's my understanding that we have an agreement with the ACLU prior to all of this to not house more than 2 inmates per cell. Did that come up in any of the lawsuit or with the ACLU? It did.
it's not in the agreement.
Does a new construction, which I know that can all be renegotiated, I understand that, but does a new construction project involve more than 2 per cell at any time, or?
The new construction could, certain components of the
That's-
new
that's all
construction
right.
can have more than, but it's all safely. What, the challenge here is in the jail that you have now is you're really not doing much in the way of classification, I don't think, because there isn't any purpose in doing it, because you kind of got only one place to put people in a cell, right? Or, in a real jail, what you do is when the prisoner comes in, you do an assessment and you decide whether is this a violent person, is this, you know, you're not gonna put, male, female, prey, predator, you know, you do an assessment and then you decide where you can put them.
I would assume that with a new facility anyhow, you would go back to the ACLU and, you know, I mean, sort of renegotiate or come up with different terms, pending your new project, or, you know what I mean? I understand that. I think some of the previous agreements that we have with the ACLU could be worked out, of course, with a new facility.
I think all they've said is, you know, do it right.
Or even a remodel facility or a remodel design. I think, who is our legal representation with the ACL? Who is representing us in that case right now?
Karen Pollock.
Karen what?
Pollock,
How do you spell that last name?
Pollack.
Okay.
And I can get you her phone number.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
And she was appointed by your insurance company, right?
You don't have our insurance people, insurance. She's through the insurance.
Our liability, is that specific to lawsuits or is it, what is that?
Liability. Yes,
Is it,
General liability.
that's what we have a lawsuit liability policy?
provide counsel.
You know, and something else, Rick, I was looking at too, and I don't know if you're running into this in any other projects, but it's, this code has brought about a lot of change in practice and prosecution. And, you know, that's, as I try to wrap my mind around all this in this big project, I'm looking at how things are gonna function in the future with these changes in practice too. And, for instance, if we look carefully at the issue of warrants versus summons, and how that might impact populations within, you know, within jail facilities. So that's another area that I'm trying to look at and consider, and I'm sure others in this room are too.
Problem with some of that warrant summons stuff is summons them, they don't show up, then you have failure here, then it has to go to a warrant. So that's where some people show up, some don't. So that's where some of that issue comes up also.
Do you see, I mean, one guy tells me he sees an impact on how it's going to affect our population, but I mean, you're there on, you know, you're in the trenches. Do you see that impacting jail populations in the future if we trend more to like a summons?
Well, I don't think that's anybody in this room's decision, though, the judges have to issue that. I mean, we don't get a say in any of that, so
Fair enough.
they're the ones that issue summonses or warrants, so.
population is down right now because of the lawsuit. If it wasn't for the number we'd have to tell them, there could be another 20 to 25 people in there right now, but the judges would put in there.
Sure. Well, that kind of answers that question then. And then, you know, just looking at the funding for this project, I don't know. It just seems like, I can remember, it kind of takes me back to my days of shopping for cars with my dad, right? And we'd go look at some really nice cars, and I'd be like, Dad, I need that car. That's the car I really want, you know? And then Dad would always bring me back to terms and say, well, this is what you can afford, right? And those were painful days. And I believe this is kind of a painful time for us because we're saying, this is what we have, this is what we can afford. And I really respect the integrity of your project and your body of work here too. I want to make sure that's clear.
I want to help you get to the answer that you can all feel comfortable with. One thing that the lawsuit doesn't state is how big do you need to make the jail? All it says is to make it safe. So, you know, is that to say that the court would be happy if we just built it big enough to house what we need at this very moment? I can't believe that we're gonna get by with that. So it's probably gonna have to be bigger than that. But we may get into a situation where somebody's gonna have to make some arguments as to why we didn't build it bigger. And I've been thinking about that a lot, because I think there are some arguments that we can make, right?
Yes.
And that'll be important, because the last thing we want is to be forced to do something.
Jim, what is the next move on the lawsuit exactly?
January 25th, we have to update the courts where we're at.
What do they expect?
Expect us to have site picked out.
Are they expecting anything on the design?
Well, I think they want the design in place, or at least worked on.
I think they want to see some sort of progress.
Progress, site plan.
I mean, we've already given them the study,
Yeah.
you know, the pre-design stuff, so they've already got that, so they're gonna expect something. I think what they want is an update of the schedule problem. So, I mean, we're getting to the point where there isn't a whole lot of new data. It's kind of like we just gotta make a decision. And I'll crank whatever you want me to crank if it'll help you guys see it in a different way, or.
I mean, I think Derek hit the nail on the head earlier before, I mean, I can't see designing it before we know where we're gonna put it and if it'll fit and if it'll work, right? I mean, I don't want you to do any work on that, not knowing the answer to that. I think that gives us time to digest. This has all been good information. I feel like we're closer to understanding what the impact of those costs will be. But, you know, ultimately that tax was made where you spend 20% of it on operations. Man, if we could get what we wanted and be able to have 20% left over to help fund the operations and keep the staff, that'd be wonderful. But, you know, that'd be a pretty small jail. So, yeah, we're just.
When was the last time we reported to the court?
When we submitted the pre-design stuff.
How long ago was that, man?
August?
Yeah, I'd say August.
I want to see progress. We've made a boatload of progress.
Well, you know, I guess it comes down to how you define progress. We're having these joint sessions, we're having discussion, we're having our architect, we're trying to find sites, we're trying to do designs and sites, you know. I mean, we can make that argument, right? we're in the midst of a pandemic here. We're all wearing masks. We have limited facilities. We have Matt Eckerly on Zoom here. So, you know, is this progress pretty good for the state we're in? I mean, there's another argument.
You just reported to him on October the 13th.
October 13th. Oh, that's right. We had to report to him on October
I
13th.
thought there was a deadline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things happened since October. So, you know, we can all make those arguments, but I think we're making some progress. I think we've got some good discussion going. And that's why I was hoping we could have this meeting today to kind of keep it going, keep the ball up in the air, if you say, and keep it going and moving in the right direction. The only way we know which way to go is to have both bodies do input and let us know where to go. Because, you know, the ultimate decision rests on this body. So I appreciate the input.
Do we agree then that we need to, work toward the option? I understand the comment on the zoning, of course, if you don't have a way to do the check on the property to see if it's viable, you have to have the option. And you have to do what Rick was talking about with the survey and the storage, because, or do we, you know, do you go ahead and go to the zoning first before you know whether it's gonna work? I mean,
Well, the zoning doesn't cost anything, so if they're not gonna zone it, there's no point spending money on it.
I'll make some inquiries tomorrow about the zoning and see if it's even an option.
Can you find out informally without having to actually?
Well, I can informally ask.
All right, so let's say,
You know, if it's not even, you know, if they won't even swallow, I mean, you know, have to go back to the drawing board, you know. It's to be an informal thing. I don't think, at this point, we don't even have an option, so we formally go to someone. The option would be designed to, you know, have soil borings, get zoning approval, all those things would be in that option before you do purchase.
to get zoning approval, we have to submit real.
Yeah, you have to submit plans.
So we'd have to have a survey and a site layout, and I would want you to have a drainage analysis done to make sure we know how much of that property is usable
Yes,
and electable. So if we get the informal yes or no, then would we go to the next step and secure the option? That would show progress.
That would show progress.
And you're gonna need a site. And the option isn't that expensive, right?
Right.
Did you have a question?
It seems to me like you're making a whole lot of progress, and it ought to be very satisfactory to the lawsuit. I'm hoping everybody's communication is the biggest part of it. And to me, you're making tremendous progress. And if you've got a contract, with a couple other counties, I know they might not hold the full load. But $40 a day, I haven't did any calculations, but $40 a day sounds to me like it's cheaper to send them out. And what it is to spend $42 million. And that does not include the extra staffing. So look what Tim's spending every week for the last year, asking for people to work as correction officers. If you're going to have to double the staff at this new facility, you got to add that on to the expense as well. So in other words, $40 a day, that sounds like the cheapest. That sounds to me like I'm doing calculations that is the cheapest alternative is to ship them out. Because like landfills, I think was the cheapest and the best alternative back to 30 years ago to ship the waste out of the county. The problem is, we're 8 trailers short now. Yeah. Now, with the facility we have now. But if you build this facility, hell, you'll have to add a whole new crew. 3 times.
Rick, what was
No.
your number on that? I'm sorry, I meant to ask
We
that
have a
yesterday,
calculation.
he reminded
The
me,
new building
24?
needs less.
Same, really, the same.
Yeah.
Is that
The way it's
288
designed,
or
we need less
196?
people. That
That
was
was
the dollar
196.
savings, because you
Give
have
me
an
a
employee,
minute.
you're paying them 45,000, by the time you insurance and retirement, you're 75,000, okay? So you try to keep that, that's a cost you incur every year. So you wanna get that cost down. Manpower cost is what we're trying to save.
Exactly.
I mean, if you spend a little bit more on the bricks and mortar, and you save manpower for 20, 30, 40 years, you're saving money.
Yeah, I agree 100%, but I don't think you should feel ashamed at the progress you're making.
Oh, we are making progress. Yeah.
To satisfy a lawsuit, I think you're making tremendous progress. Take your time and do it right. And,
The problem is January 1 of
29 versus 24.
2023, this has to be done by the judge. So, I mean, you have a certain time frame you have to complete this thing.
by that time, you might have another 100 inmates to put to work.
You don't know what you're gonna have.
Get the arrow put to work.
What do you say?
You need 29 jailers to operate the new 288 bed jail. I think it takes like damn near that many to operate the current jail properly. You need 24 jailers to operate the 196 bed new jail. So effectively, there's no increase in jailers to operate the new jail for 10 or 20 years.
If we have things to build it without community corrections, Tim, are there times where those guys help each other out, or is it totally different?
We help each other out right now.
And the problem with that also is the meals. You have one kitchen now, if you're, have a community corrections here downtown, and then you have your new site, you have two separate kitchens, which means two separate kitchen staffs. Then that's why I hate to see them two different places. You know what I mean?
Sorry, man.
No, go ahead.
Right now, Community Corrections does not have the staff covered like third shift. Our jailers have to go over there on third shift to cover, take care of the inmates.
I mean, the challenge that you have is that you've got an existing 118 bed jail that by the letter of the law, you should only be able to put 80% in there. You have to have 20% free, so that's 94 people. If your average count was 128 last year, that means you'd have to ship out 34. At $40, 365, that means $500,000 a year, every single year for out of, I mean, until the $40 goes up.
Plus medical, plus you gotta pay the legal staff to go to that site. You have to pay them mileage. So there's other costs incurred.
What's your gas?
Yes.
Transport.
So there's some cost there. So it's just not that one fee.
I don't think shipping people out is a bad strategy.
Not for short term, but I think
Part
we get
of
the
your
long term.
strategy, particularly since we're only doing a 10-year solution. I think you look at that and say, well, that's what we could do. But I don't think it's gonna get us out of this problem.
Does anybody have any questions for Matt? On the phone patiently?
I forgot about that.
We're still waiting, is he still? Still awake?
I'm still here.
Oh, thank you, Matt. Any questions for Matt?
The only thing we had talked about, a small potential difference in a small interest rate change. Did you have a chance to look at that at all?
Oh, the sensitivity analysis of the small interest rate change. Yeah, it would, if the interest rate were to boost by, I can't remember the exact amount of give we had talked about, but I had just run something yesterday. Let me pull that up. I had everything else pulled up, and of course, the one thing I forgot to pull up is not there. So bear with me for a moment. My apologies.
I'll go home with this.
So a 50 basis point change upwards could reduce your issued amount by a little over $1 million, between $1 million and $1.5 million. I did it in just round numbers, just for the purpose of this exercise. But that could, with the constraints of your revenue stream, if the interest rates were to increase by about 50 basis points, which is 0.5%, you could see an impact on the amount of principal issued of between $1 million and $1.5 million. Split the difference at 1 1/4. And then you'd see a similar, if interest rates went down, which would be pretty unlikely, you could see a similar boost in the amount of principal available. Because we're controlling the amount of payments subject to the revenue stream that's available.
In the worst case, that would suck up a third of our contingency, maybe 40% of our contingency. So it's not like we don't have something in there for it, but it'd be a pretty healthy suck.
Rick, I got another question for you. What would you anticipate an 80-bed, if you will, cell facility addition to cost?
80 beds?
Yes.
And
80 cells, I'll say.
so just the jail itself, no community corrections?
Right, just cells.
Well, we could, I'd have to really put a pencil to it, but we were looking at 196 was 29 million right on the screen. So you would have to think that something like that is about half, or, so yeah.
And then renovation on top of that, probably another 7. Renovation of what? I'm just brainstorming, thinking out loud.
We talking about
overall facilities, what I was thinking out loud, but the community corrections, Sheriff, correct me if I'm wrong, this community corrections is designed for capacity, and I know it's not sales, I get it. But it's designed for what, 120, give or take, 120? And then, we probably don't exceed, what do we exceed? What's like a big number of community corrections, maybe 50, 60?
40.
40? It's a little underutilized, but I'm just thinking. Sheriff's gonna give me a tour here and educate me some more, but I'm just trying to think of our layout, our footprint over there, and
The challenge that we had there was adding anything on that site, tearing stuff down and trying to add something on. We ended up in multi-story, which is kind of like.
yeah, I don't like that idea. I don't like multi-story.
I don't like multi-story.
Yeah.
And it was so hodgepodged up that you end up with really, really inefficient staffing. And instead of 24 jailers, we needed 34 or something like that, and that just kills.
I don't want to see anything built over one level, because right now we've got 2 floors over there. And if somebody upstairs plugs up a daggone toilet or drain or whatever, right now you'll have water down in the hallways in the first floor. We get water in the radio room.
I agree.
We get water in the jail commander's office, and I don't want it.
I agree. And I think construction costs, I mean, you start ramping up your construction costs and you start trying to build 2 layers or 3 stories or whatever it might be. And then, as Mr. Clark mentioned, then you gotta contend with ADA issues. And so I would never suspect that'd be a good avenue to take. I would be more ground level.
Ground level is the best way. One of his biggest problems that I would have a hang up with is his way to move prisoners is in an elevator. Do you want to get in an elevator with how many of these guys? No way, Jose. The new facility that we've designed for you, it's 2 levels too, but the only thing that's on the upper level are beds. All the plumbing is on the first floor.
We saw that up in Knox County.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Right now, you get a leak, we gotta constantly put in new ceiling tiles and repair in the radio rooms. That stuff gets into consoles and damages the radios and stuff, it's gonna be a lot of money. Replace that stuff. We've been fortunate so far that we haven't had that problem with replacing the radios because of the water.
Yeah, you have a regular budget item, I can't remember what it was like $50,000 a year to fix that place up. Repair.
Jim's got, and if you have clearance to pursue an option in a location, all right?
Yes.
I think that's, well, I don't know if anybody disagrees that that's the next logical step.
I would ensure that the zoning is gonna get done before we spend money.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Rick.
You're welcome, thank you for all being here.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?